both our community leaders, activists, and protest organizers. And let me start by saying that the protest organizers, stated at the very beginning, they praised the Detroit Police Department. They stressed that this was nothing to do with the work that we do each and every day. We were very thankful for that. And some of the organizers, quite frankly, have not always agreed with us, but they've always been willing to sit down and have a discussion. So to the organizers, we're deeply thankful. And when the tide turned and a very few decided to engage in violence, it was the organizers that denounced the violence and said, we're not here for this. But I also want to support, and there's so many, like Detroit 300, that recovered a stolen taser from one of our officers who were out highly visible, and the many other community leaders and activists who didn't stand in the back. They stood with us, they walked with us, and they interfaced with the protesters and then those who had other agendas. So again, thank you for assisting us, being on the front lines. So I want to just talk very briefly about my message. It's simple. We will continue to support protesters in getting out their message. We support it. However, to those who threaten the safety of our community, our police officers, and damage property, we will not tolerate your criminal actions. And our response will be both measured and effective. I just find it so interesting that these that have other agendas to undermine, while so many are trying to get out the right message, that they chant, Black Lives Matter. And then I had to reflect for a moment and says, does it really? It's no secret Detroit has one of the highest population of African Americans of any major city in this country. But yet you know that we're still actively battling a crisis, COVID-19. We also know that African Americans are 3 or 4 times more likely to contract this deadly disease or die from this deadly disease. So as a survivor, I question your motive when you disregard a well-known fact. Why? Just one question. And so I'll close on that note, but I do want to give you some of the stats from yesterday. And I think our mayor will elaborate in much more detail. So, and while the beginning of the event was peaceful, it was orderly, those with agendas to disrupt, we did make arrests. And what we made, we arrested 45 males, 15 females, and of the males arrested, only 17 from the city of Detroit. Of the females arrested, 6 were from Detroit. And so you might ask, where did they come from? Many of the local neighboring communities, for example, Westland, Farmington Hills, Grand Blanc, Hamtramck, West Bloomfield, Warren, Farmington Hills, Lincoln Park, Clarkston, Dearborn. My message is simple. If you want to disrupt, stay home and disrupt in your own community. Also, when you talk about yesterday's stats, and I know this question will probably get asked, they were arrested for disorderly conduct. As you probably know, and I'll repeat, 2 of our officers were injured. One was a commanding officer, a captain, who was struck in the head by a rock. He suffered a concussion. He was treated at a local hospital, released, and he's recovering now as we speak. A second officer, during the protests, fell and injured his shoulder. He too will recover. And then 7 of our police vehicles were damaged by these same individuals. So again, we support the right to free speech. We support peaceful protests. And again, I want to just so much, the folks that are joining me here today, thank you for being our partners. Thank you for understanding the importance of we're in this together. with that, I'll turn it over to our mayor, Mayor Mike Duggan.
I also want to thank our partners who have been with us every step of the way, because for the Detroit community, the last 2 months have been a period of deep mourning. We've been mourning the loss of 1,372 members of our community, our grandfathers and grandmothers, our fathers and mothers, our brothers and sisters, in some cases, our sons and daughters, to COVID-19. But we're also mourning the loss of George Floyd, of Breonna Taylor, of Ahmaud Arbery. I never, for a second, lose sight of the fact that I was hired by a community that's predominantly African American. And when members of our community watched a criminal police officer choke the life out of George Floyd, the pain they were feeling was more than the pain of that one incident. It was the residual and generational trauma of their own personal experiences, reignited memories by seeing this kind of terrible incident. The pain our community is in runs very deep, and that's why when Detroit's activist communities organized this peaceful rally, I applauded what they were doing. And when that huge peaceful protest marched through the streets of Detroit, it sent a powerful message across the country that the people of Detroit were speaking loudly and clearly for justice and for an end to racial bigotry in our law enforcement system. And the protest wasn't just supported by me. Chief Craig was the first major city police chief to call out this Minneapolis police officer for what he is, a murderer. This protest was supported by the members of the Detroit Police Department. And I want to give credit to the activist community, some of whom are here today, who put this on. If you saw the initial kickoff speeches as they rallied people to the streets, they talked about the fact that this was not about the Detroit Police Department, that in fact, the activist community is always prodding the police to do better, as they should. But there is a great and respectful partnership and a sincere effort on the part of the Detroit Police Department to hold wrongdoers accountable and to celebrate those officers who value everyone. And a number of reporters commented on the fact that as the protest started out, Detroit police officers were handing out masks and hand sanitizers. We've had 600 police officers on quarantine. We've had our own chief who had COVID-19. Our officers felt a kinship with those protesters and wanted to make sure that they were safe. But somewhere along the line, it turned. And as Chief Craig has said, it was a relatively small number of people who, without a doubt, were making trouble. It started with incidents with police cars and continued on through the night. And I know that the chief mentioned some of these, but I want you to think about the people who were arrested. They weren't people, 2/3 of them, who had a history in this community, who had any relationship with the Detroit Police Department, who knew anything about the history and the efforts that Chief Craig and the leadership team have made. We had people arrested last night from Brighton, from Warren, from Plymouth, from Farmington Hills, from Dearborn, from Clarkston, from Ann Arbor, and Bay City. Now, you have to ask why. Maybe all of these people come from cities whose police departments are not in need of their voices, and they felt they had to come down here. Or more likely, they came here to damage property and to throw rocks and bottles at our police officers. And in many cases, it was our own activists. And the chief mentioned Detroit 300, but there were several others who intervened to keep things from being much worse. I just want to say how proud I am of the men and women of the Detroit Police Department last night. In a long and emotional night through hours of being provoked, of having things thrown at them, our officers behaved with courage and professionalism. Every move was being recorded on video. And it shows you the training that Chief Craig and the leadership team at DPD have instilled in this department, the way that they acquitted themselves. And I want the men and women of DPD to know that this city is very proud of you today. And as I watched last night, I kept thinking about the 1,372 people in our city we've lost to COVID-19. We have nearly beaten this coronavirus. This is a week we should be talking about reopening restaurants and hair and nail salons and businesses and getting people back to work. We nearly have this beaten, and as I'm watching this crowd, many of whom are crowded in with no masks and no regard for the health of Detroiters, I'm thinking, what happens if this spikes back up? And when these folks go back home and the virus is spreading in this community, we can't let that happen. The voices of change expressed by the protesters are powerful and they're important. And we don't want to do anything to diminish your voices. But we're asking that in these protests, that you turn to each other and not turn on each other. And that in the coming days, with the partners that we have here, we want you to stay safe, protect our city, and protect each other. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to a man who has been advocating for stronger police accountability his whole life and is just a valued member of this community and advisor to the department, Ray Winans.
My name is Ray Winans. And to sit back yesterday and see my city, I was proud, right, with the peaceful protests. As a black man in this community, when I seen what happened to George Floyd, I became angry. I became fearful. And I actually became scared to see what took place in Minnesota and the way the community responded. I felt their pain. I felt their anger. We've taken a lot of beatings over the years. But one of the things that I do recognize is the relationship that we have been working on with our Detroit Police Department and the city government for accountability, responsibility, and transparency. When I think about my experiences in the suburbs, it's not like in Detroit. So my message today is for the folks that want to participate in peaceful protests, want to deal with police accountability and responsibility, do it in their own community. If Black Lives Matter, advocate with those officers in your community, in those suburbs, and let them know. Sometimes you ain't just got to pull over black folks just because they driving through our communities. Because if any of our black and brown boys from Detroit would have went to any of those suburbs and threw bricks and rocks, I'm pretty sure we'd be seeing a CNN World News story because they probably would have gotten murdered had they would have been anywhere in the city, in any of these suburban cities, anywhere outside of Detroit. For our Detroiters, we got us. Detroit got Detroit. Anything that's peaceful, we all for it. But we don't need chaos. We've been in the process of building our communities. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff going on downtown, but we've been advocating for our neighborhoods as well. And so I can't imagine what those parents are feeling. A kid lost his life. But the kid lost his life after our activists and our police department said that our peaceful protest was over. So it wasn't on DPD watch, even though it happened in the city of Detroit. It wasn't on our local activist watch. It was because it was a chaotic scene going on downtown with some folks that didn't belong here didn't understand, did not reach out to our community and figure out how do we support, not take over. And so our hearts go out to the family that lost that baby yesterday too. But again, in this message, Detroit got Detroit. If we got a problem with Chief Craig and me and him don't see eye to eye every day. But we know how to communicate. Our activists know how to communicate with our law enforcement. We don't need no outsiders coming in, disrupting our community, trying to tear up our stuff, because we can't do that in West Bloomfield. We can't do that in none of them cities y'all just named. We can't go out there. Black folks can't go out there and do that. So we asking y'all, please, please, stay at home. If y'all want to come in and connect with our activists, get with the activists. But don't come up here trying to disrupt and tear up our stuff. We work too hard for it, and we're working too hard to keep it and to keep it going. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to one of our activists, Reverend Williams.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Reverend Ray Winans, and thank you to all those who are here. We are in a moment where we are suffering from pain and trauma like we haven't seen before in the history of most of our lifetimes. Pain and trauma where 1,370, I believe the mayor said, individuals have passed away because of COVID-19. We've seen multiple police brutality cases throughout the nation. And most of us are forced to scroll up and down our Facebook timelines and see a man being choked to his death over and over again. And so through it all, for the first time, we have seen a chief of police pierce the blue veil by speaking out against a very important issue and agreeing that this officer should be jailed. That's history, and I want to thank Chief James Craig for his words and for his bravery. I also want to thank the mayor of the city of Detroit for providing the leadership needed in the middle of a chaotic night. I recognize that the mayor could have made calls and things could have turned out much differently. I also would like to thank the officers of the city of Detroit. I always tell reporters in the midst of different police brutality issues and such that the Detroit Police Department is special. Why? Because many of them are our brothers, our cousins, our church members, pastors, deacons, community leaders, and on top of all of that, they also serve as protection for our community. And so when I saw last night, I watched in disbelief that in the midst of COVID-19, an international world pandemic, individuals were marching and protesting without masks, next to each other, forcing our officers, forcing our community to break the boundaries of social distancing. These outsiders put our community in harm's way. And I use the term outsiders nicely, but really what I would like to say is that they're no different than what we consider white supremacists. Their blatant disregard for our officers, for our community members, for our property, our tax dollars. How many officers had to work overtime? How many officers will be off now? How many officers and how many community residents will be struck with coronavirus now because of these, what I consider white supremacists who come from Clarkston and Farmington Hills, Brighton, and Ann Arbor, You know, I'm the president of the National Action Network. We get requests every day from individuals who feel like they have been wrongly done by the criminal justice systems in all of those cities. And I'm quite sure the NAACP can say the same. It's quite amazing that they decide to come to Detroit, wreak havoc, and thwart a demonstration that was supposed to be a demonstration of solidarity. You know, I'm no stranger to protest and demonstration. I do it a little bit too much, I'm sure some would think. But during COVID-19, there is no protest. There is no demonstration. There are no demonstrations. There are no protests. We aren't organizing anything that put our members and citizens and residents and police officers in harm's way. We got one duty, and that is to stay home and stay safe. And so, I'm not calling a protest today. I'm calling off all protests and asking and pleading all of those who are suffering with the pain and trauma of this environment that we're in to find productive ways to do this without endangering each other. I love the city. I love the church I pastor, the organization that I run, the officials that run it. And the only way that we can really show that love is that in this moment, we do what we need to do together to stay home and to stay safe and prepare for a reintroduction into our normal lives. I would like to introduce Pastor Mo.
Thank you, my brother. To our mayor, to our chief of police, Chief Craig, Mayor Duggan, and the distinguished clergy on the panel, and all those good folk in the room. I am Pastor Maurice L. Hartwick, and better known as Pastor Mo. And I have this shirt on that says Street Sweeper. That's my nickname, my little nickname, because I believe in cleaning the streets of Detroit. With some of the very people who have been those who have been a problem in the past of dirtying the streets. We made a vow to clean the streets of Detroit. And in that vow yesterday, I locked arms with a lot of activists and community leaders. And we locked arms in solidarity to promote a peaceful protest, to allow and to come together to voice our bitterness, our outrage with what's happening around the world. But here's the thing. Even those who usually be agitators, those who stood down yesterday and did not have a mind to disrupt the city, to riot the city. Even those who usually not in line with us got in line. So here's my message to those who come into Detroit who do not know what's going on in Detroit. You have the right idea, just the wrong city. You have the wrong city, because what you don't know is that the activists, we had locked arms and we checked in with Detroit Police and Chief Craig. We check in. Chief Craig is the chief of police in Detroit. He cannot go to Atlanta and just rule there. He must check in with the chief of police there. So the message to you all, the so-called activists who do not live in Detroit or don't work with us, you need to check in with us before you get a mind to come in here and disrupt. You must check in with the activists here. And you let us school you on how this works, because we know how it works. We check in with DPD. This city does not have a huge, any kind of police brutality problem with murder. And if we had some occasions, and guess what Chief Craig did? When Damon Grimes got hit with that taser, guess what he did? Did his freaking job. and made sure they took to the people for prosecution. Guess what it did when the officer said things wrong about Bad Felicia? Guess what he did? Opened up a full investigation on that precinct and did not stop at protect his police. He stopped at truth and led them wherever it was to be righteous, to stand. So we ain't just here for yesterday. We have a long-standing, he has a record of being honest with us and doing his job. And our mayor checks in with our mayor. So we ain't just here by happenstance. We have a relationship that we go in and we in the trenches and we work hard. You heard Ray Winans, you heard Charles Adams, you're going to hear the others. You hear Negus Boo, Tafari Brent, you hear 300, you hear Ceasefire. We all lock arms to allow the people the right to outrage in a peaceful way to say, hey, we all upset. Think Chief Craig ain't upset about what's going on? He called it murder. Think the mayor ain't upset? You heard what he said. We all upset. But being upset does not lead to breaking the law and destroying property, and we didn't have that. You want to know why? Because we are here to protect. And it's going to happen today. It's going to happen today. And I would tell you those who are listening, who want to come in here and think you're going to start something tonight, hit 94 and go back the other way. Hit 94 and go back the other way because it ain't going down. The guys in the hood, I checked in with them. They ain't buying it. We're not buying it. The people in the community stand strong with us having a right to a peaceful protest. The people in the hood, even the guys in the hood say, you ain't tearing our city up. We ain't like that down here. Take that somewhere. Right idea was the wrong city. Again, because Chief Craig, Deputy Chief Bedison checks in with us daily, weekly. We ain't just starting nothing when the fires come up. We in proactive work. Am I right, Chief Craig?
Absolutely.
It's proactive. So we have a relationship that stands the test of time. Ain't our first time going through something like that. We shut it down the last time, then we on Evergreen. It's our first time going through this. But you don't hear about it naturally. You want to know why? Because they don't disrespect us. And we don't disrespect them. We work together to get things done. And so to those agitators, you will not come in this city. You will not come make us look bad. We're here to allow, Chief Craig gave them a lane, gave them the whole police headquarters, the parking lot. Let's let them have it. Take Michigan if you want it. To let them express themselves. Who does that? He could have shut it down. He ain't have to lie. You ain't going to do that in my parking lot of my house, I bet you that. But he gave them a lane because we stand with people who want to come, and we advocate, even the actor, we advocate for those to have a voice to express themselves in a positive way, because we all upset. We want it to be felt around the nation. But we stand as a model. This is a model of how it should look, and we not burning, not because they ain't wanted to burn. We not burning, and we not on fire because they work hand in hand with the people here who make a difference. And that's different. And the world needs to look at what we're doing over here. And I'm not going to speak like ain't nothing can happen, because they wanted to burn it. And they might even try. But guess what? The majority of Detroiters are not going for it. I stand for one. We're not going for it. You will not tear down our property. We work hard. This city seen this city 8 years ago? We did some work around here. And we're going to the community. We're doing more work. But you ain't going to tear down what we built up. This built on black power, black excellence, and with leadership from all different colors. We don't have that problem here in Detroit. You ain't going to come in here and put that on us, put that onus on us. Take that out there to where it happened at. Like Ray said, you ain't going to do that out there. Let's go protest out there where they shooting them down at without no regard. It ain't happening here. Name me a case when Chief Craig ain't handled it. Name me one. I'll wait. I thought so. Okay, so again, we here, I'll be here on behalf of the clergy. I'm a clergy. Listen, I'm a clergy, I'm a pastor, I'm an activist, and I'm a rapper, a CEO. So I'm here for the rap world, the street world, activist world, and we all stand together with the chief and with the mayor and with the activists and with the clergy community, and we say peace to our city. Stand strong. You'll have a right to protest and be outraged. Check in with your children today. Know where your children is at. Make sure your children don't come out here and be coming down here. You want to say, well, I'm afraid of my kids getting shot by police. Don't let them come down here agitating. They was torn. I was in the crowd all day till 1 o'clock in the morning. I didn't get home. They was taunting, trying to start something, trying to get on CNN. Fake news. Trying to get on CNN. taunting and throwing and calling these people out their name. They just took it and took it. Not because you're tough, because we built a relationship that's real. And we asked them to stand down. So don't come in here, well, we mad because you're doing it off our back and our sweat, and we ain't going for it. Back down, stand down. In Jesus' name, bless.
Reverend Anthony.
Thank you, Mayor, and to Chief Craig and to my fellow colleagues in the struggle. Let me just say, first of all, our prayers and thoughts are with still the Floyd family and every family that has lost a loved one because of a knee or a bullet or a rope or whatever has created this situation that we're in currently. I am George Floyd. I am Ahmaud Arbery. I am Philando Castile. I'm Trayvon Martin. Sisters in here, you are Breonna Taylor. Every black man is one of those individuals. Every black woman is a sister like that. If Chief Hart or Chief Craig now were to take off his uniform and find himself just traveling somewhere and have a stop, he too could become a victim. Chief Bedison, same thing. Reverend Williams, same thing. I dare say, Mayor and Chief, if America, if Minnesota, as an example, had followed the instructions of the Department of Justice in 2015 when they told them what a good police department should do, how to change and reform, George Floyd might still be alive. I dare say if other departments had implemented way back 52 years ago the Kerner Report and the Kerner Commission, a lot of us would still be alive today. I dare say if police departments across the nation had implemented Barack Obama's task force on 21st century policing, a lot of us would be alive today. The problem is we have the blueprint, but we are not doing the implementation. We are not implementing that which we know. Real activists know how to act. I have marched from Angola in Southwest Africa to South Africa, to Ghana, to Washington, to Atlanta, to New York, to LA, to Grand Rapids, to Livonia, to Detroit, to DC, to North Carolina, and ain't tore up nothing. And the point has been made. Ain't tore up nothing. And the point has been made. We're in solidarity with everybody that wants to protest. We believe in protest. We know how to protest, but we know how to do it right. It should not overpower and cover the real issue. The real issue is black pain and death and destruction. The real issue is a lack of access to opportunity. The real issue is that we keep doing the same thing in the same way and getting the same results. The real issue is that when are we going to bring the resources of our nation together to inject a cure for this pandemic of racism and white supremacy? When are we going to level the curve on that? When are we going to take the time, activists, from wherever community you are, to really deal with the issues? If you really want to address these issues, and we stand in solidarity with you, address them in Royal Oak, where black folks show up every Monday morning before the pandemic in courts because they were stopped for bogus traffic stops. Address them in Dearborn. Address them in Grosse Pointe. Address them in Novi and Rochester and Grand Rapids. You can protest in your own backyard. Protest in your own city hall. Don't come down to Detroit and tear the city up and then go back home. That's putting another knee on the neck of black folk, because we got to live here. The pandemic is still going on, and so parents, you who have children, you who have teenagers, the young people that are still living in your house with you and ain't paying no rent, ain't paying nothing, for them to be downtown, no mask, no gloves, and to come back in the house with their little brother and sister, with their grandparents, and with you, they're putting you in jeopardy and in danger, because they are subject to receiving a cough or a sneeze or some spittle from somebody that may be a carrier and he or she that does not know it. You need to check yourself before you lose yourself. You need to understand that there's a better way to do this. And so I hope that out of this, some things will happen. We need to develop this moment into a movement. The movement should be, are you registered to vote? Are you voting in November? You got a national president that's saying, looting, we mean shooting. That's the same message as George Wallace was given back in the 60s. In other words, bring you down. If you want to make a difference, unelect this guy who was not for you. Mayors are elected. Prosecutors are elected. Attorney generals are elected. Governors are elected. Sheriffs are elected. If you are not voting, you are still perpetuating your own sense of subjugation and a reduction of your potential to have your privilege recognized. I'm tired of living beneath the privilege. Black folks should not have to live beneath their own privilege. And we need to get a handle on this and engage our community. There's a way to do this, but it should be done in the right way. There's a way to do this, but it should be done in a peaceful way. Martin Luther King changed the world. He didn't throw a rock. He didn't break a window. He didn't shoot a pistol. He didn't use a rope. He didn't throw nothing with fire connected to it. He marched. He used his voice, and he changed the world. And for those of you who say that was back in the day, no, that's current today, because you have the right to march and protest because of what he and others did to make that possible. So we're simply saying that there's a way to do this. We support peaceful protests, but we don't support tearing up our city and you going back home and leaving us holding the bag. Not here today. That's not what we're about. And so we hope that we can take this moment and make it into a real movement to change our condition and not maintain the same position that we find ourselves in. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. So with that, I think you can see that for anybody who's looked at the progress this city has made in recent years, it wasn't because of an election of one person. It was because the talents of this community are working together and not working against each other. It has been the unity that has driven this recovery. And it's the unity that's going to get us through the period that we're in. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Good afternoon, ML Elric, Detroit Free Press. I got a few questions. Hopefully they'll cover a lot of what people are wondering. Are there any plans for anything tonight? Are you anticipating any sort of second wave or whatever you would characterize it? We've heard that there may be an attempt to reassemble tonight.
I have information that there are going to be a couple of groups that may show, so I'm getting information on that.
Are these groups that were organizing the original protest yesterday or groups that have emerged since last night?
I think one of the two that I'm aware of is one that has emerged, but there's no indication other than a peaceful protest.
Okay.
I want, if I could also address the question. There was a flyer that went out last week calling on this protest on Saturday. I saw the flyer. There were no names on the flyer, no organizations on the flyer, so no one knew who called it. So I had members of National Action Network that I know attended the protest on yesterday, and we made it very clear to all of our members after this today that we will not be participating in any unknown protest with no known leaders or no phone numbers or identifications.
So, Reverend Williams, are you saying that the protests that people are talking about tonight or demonstration or
there is no organizational
was previously scheduled before
the one yesterday?
No, but you said for Saturday.
I'm sorry, the one for Friday was previously scheduled.
Okay, understood.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. What is the police protocol for deploying tear gas? At what point do you make that call, and do you feel that everybody followed the manual on that?
Preservation of life, property, certainly, as I indicated in my brief remarks, there was tremendous patience throughout this ordeal. Even before the decision, and I take responsibility for the decision, I decided when the first deployment started, the second and third and fourth deployment of gas, but that was after a number of attempts to get the revelers to calm down. The officers took a significant number of projectiles. Prior to that, there was at one point, and this was even before the cars were damaged, there was an effort to approach one of our police facilities. We were able to stop that, and so tremendous amount of patience. And so even before deploying the gas, we gave not one but 3 warnings. We advised them. Even when we enhanced the amount of gas, we also said that this next volley of gas will be more intense. So the communication continued throughout, and it was through that we succeeded in dispersing the remaining individuals. Again, we're talking about a small group who moved around together. In fact, that same group early on when the protest was peaceful, they knew and recognized our special response team or our SWAT officers. They began to follow and taunt them almost throughout the ordeal, and they didn't respond.
Okay. When I'm thinking around 11:30, when people were massing on Randolph and police ordered them to back up when they were behind the shields and advanced slowly, there's some feeling that may have escalated things. What's your take on that?
Absolutely not. In fact, there were many times in what's not being reported that we in some way retreated, created more space, believing that by doing so it would calm these revelers. I've had some experience with this, and I would tell you it is a last resort, and I've imparted some of that since I've been here. Before we don helmets, carry shields, because we know the impact that will have. I'll tell you an interesting fact that, children love police horses. They walk up, they want to pat the horse. As soon as that horse is donning protective gear in a riotous way, it has an impact on groups of people that becomes negative. So we're very sensitive on how we approach groups of people, especially when there's sensitive issues. And we tried all of that. It was a last resort to even don the helmets. We know the impact, gas masks, and even deploying the shields. But our officers took a significant amount of projectiles throughout this ordeal.
Chief,
as I indicated, one got injured.
Chief, I want to just, I'd like to say that, I have organized protests in this city from 25 people to about 1,500 people. And in every circumstance, the Detroit Police Department and the Detroit police officers have exercised the greatest amount of patience with small to very, very large crowds in every circumstances. But I've also been in other locations across the state as well as across the country where that was not so. And so when I saw the helmets and the gas masks, as well as even the gas being deployed, I knew that we were past a point that we really did not need to be in. And so I support it. I support the chief in his decisions, all of his decisions that he made that night to make sure that we in this city were safe.
You said this too, because I was there. As far as to your question, as far as that, I was in the crowd. I'll tell you what I witnessed, what I heard. I overheard and actually had a verbal altercation with a group of guys plotting that they gonna let this MF burn. How they were going to get a police officer. They was plotting how we gotta go hard. We gotta go harder. They wanted to make CNN. We stopped them. We approached them. We checked them, and we saw people try. Like if you watched on the news when the one you saw it on TV where the person was in the car. They were snatching the person out the car. The officer said, "All right, you know what? Let them go. Back up." They let the person, and they had them finna pull them out. Okay, you don't go back from that. They said, no. They asked them for a leniency, give them a chance, let them go ahead and pull off. And all the officers went back. Give you a scenario over on Evergreen, and I know Deputy Chief Bedison maybe don't mind me telling this, but it was the scene was set. The chopper's in the air, the news is there, the rioters were there, it was the ICE shooting. The scene was set and lit, ready to go. They had the protective gear out. We trying to calm them down. They wouldn't calm down. The people came up. We went through a whole day of trying to peaceful protest. Now I got to ready to. It's about to go to Ferguson now. I went to Deputy Bedison personally. I'm the one that went to him and said, Deputy Chief Bedison, Detroit different. Ask your men, just trust me. Ask your men to just stand down. They gonna go home. Give them about 30 minutes. They gotta go get their kids from school. Detroit, we ain't into that. We about money, work. This is a working town, and we about doing things right. I said, just let them go ahead and just go home. And he looked at me, and he called Chief, and he made the decision. They just said, you know what? They all got in their cars and just pulled off. Remember that, Chief? Just back down. That's restraint. That's strength of restraint. When he thought about these people kids. And he thought about the activists saying, we got this. Don't need to go to the riot part. They walked away, got in the cars, and pulled off. And you know what happened? An hour later, they was going home. And I can tell you this, we ain't about, people that come and want to loot and riot, what does Target and soap and towels got to do with people's anger for this kind of murder? We people want justice, not no Target material. So these people, he had to do it at some point to just try to stop them. It wasn't to hurt them. It's to stop them from hurting themselves. Understand that.
And Mel, I wanted to also add, and I think it's important to note, that on two separate occasions, members from that group tried to hit our officers. In fact, one resulted in a vehicular pursuit, which ended up on the freeway. The Michigan State Police pursued this vehicle. They ended up apprehended, and an arrest was made. And that subject was from outside the city as well. So, and that was even before the decision to deploy gas.
Okay.
Those two incidents, it came very close. One of the officers was on a bicycle.
So, Chief, to Reverend Moe's point, was there ever a point at which command considered, you know what, we're just going to go and let this burn itself out?
Absolutely not.
How come?
Well, first of all, I pay attention to what's going on, not just locally, but across this country. In the city of New York, Brooklyn, in the borough, they took over a police station. That's not going to happen here, number one. There were some other instances, some things I monitored. They were not going to take over headquarters. It's not going to happen. And so pulling out and allowing the revelers to do what they wanted to do was never an option. What Pastor Moe described was a very different situation. And so we responded in a different way. As it was already indicated, as Reverend Williams pointed out, we just don't deploy helmets and shields and gas masks unless it's serious. That was a last result. I understand the impact that has on people because they know once they see that, is getting ready to happen. And so they're bracing up.
And we're in the middle of a pandemic.
If I can say this, Chief, to ML, I think, ML, you've been around long enough to understand and to know that when you have demonstrations like this, you have provocateurs, you have saboteurs, you have people who are looking for events such as this to get engaged. I've been in enough marches for the last 50 years to know that when we get out in the street, there's going to be an element who has not the same purpose and the goal that we do. You might want to do a piece on this. Provocateurs in the movement, mayhem in the movement. And the mayors of Chicago and Atlanta and Minnesota have all indicated the same thing, that they have noticed people coming into the city to participate who do not have the interests of the city at heart. Detroit is no different than that. And one of the things that I want to say to those who consider themselves to be activists, you should have marshals whose job it is to look within your ranks to make sure that the people who are giving instructions are your people, that they are not following somebody else's line, and to identify and expose those people who are creating the havoc within the protest itself. So we're going to have that. I would certainly not want the police. First of all, if the police were doing the wrong thing, I would not be sitting here.
Absolutely.
If Chief Craig was out there beasting the people, if his troops were out there abusing black folks and white folks in the city of Detroit, I would not be sitting at this damn table.
Hear, hear.
I would be out there with them saying, no, we need a new chief. We need a new department. We need a new mayor. We need all of that. That's not what's happening. We fought for this. We fought for a Chief Craig. We fought for a police community commission. We fought for black folk to be on the department. We fought for equal opportunity and equity. So for us now to be on a different side and say we don't want that to occur, that's counterproductive. We're not about that. So I'm glad that the police take a stand, a righteous stand, that they are patient. Because a lot of folk that ain't patient. I remember being in Livonia years ago when we were having a march in Livonia, and we had another governor, we had another chief, we had another mayor out there, and we were on the front line, and they was getting ready to shoot us. And the official from the Department of Justice had to say, hold it, back up, take that police, get them off the line, because they're getting ready to do something that we don't want to happen. I've been there, so I know. And I'm saying that we need some good police who know how to be patient, because they want to go home too. And they need to be safe too. So I just want to say that if Chief Craig was wrong, if Mayor Duggan was wrong, none of us would be sitting up in here.
Absolutely.
None of us. So when they right, they're right, we support them.
Absolutely.
When they're wrong, we don't.
Right.
They right now. And so that's why we're sitting here. And so I encourage you to do something on the saboteurs, the provocateurs, who are trying to tear up our city, and we ain't going to have it.
ML, also to your point, I started to reflect on yesterday. When the violence started, of course, there were a number of police cars damaged in the process. One such suspect literally ripped out the windshield of one of our scout cars. That suspect was arrested today.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we got the suspect. He did live outside, I want to say Sterling Heights. He's in our custody now. We made a conscious decision, given the way things were quickly evolving. We couldn't get to him without putting others at risk. We waited, but we identified him yesterday. And so we waited patiently, and he's in our custody right now.
Okay. Reverend Anthony mentioned something that I heard from our pastors and organizers here, and I'd like to ask all of you, whatever the intentions of the people who organized this, do you find fault with them for not having marshals, for not understanding how to control a crowd like that, for not anticipating how many people were there, or for even organizing something like this during a pandemic? I think, Reverend Williams, you said no protest because of COVID-19. How much responsibility do the folks who called people to gather bear?
I don't blame them for what they did. I think a lot of thought was put into it. There was a lot of pain in this community. They talked to us ahead of time. The police department had the masks and the sanitizer out there. If you look at what happened, the original protest, they basically called it to an end at 8 o'clock at night. And while there were some incidents there, I thought the original protest was well handled, and there were individuals here who intervened on some incidents themselves. They may not have been officially marshals, but they functioned as marshals. The problems developed after the original protest stopped, and the chief could talk about what happened as the night went on. But I feel very good, certainly about the intentions and the way the original organizers did. Maybe somebody disagrees with me, but I thought...
Just to
I thought
be
the
clear,
mayor
my question is not about intentions. It's about the technical aspects of it, because I was on Michigan Avenue at 5 o'clock, and there were some fools going after police cars, and that was well before it got dark out.
I will tell you.
I was very familiar with that, and I think I touched on it. I didn't go into as descriptive as you, but that was the same group that was taunting our SRT assets. They know.
When they were down by Old Tiger Stadium there?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we knew that. They tried to taunt those officers. They didn't respond to it. But that was before they started really using projectiles and trying to run police officers over. Of course, the first thing that started was the damage of the police cars. But again, very different dynamic.
Yeah, but that was fake news. Flat out fake news. They was trying to get on CNN. I heard them saying it.
Right, but I'm just wanting to Reverend Anthony's point about the marshals. There is an art to doing this, and people
It is,
know what they're doing. There's trial and error, and we like
it is,
to get out
ML,
there.
and part of what you're asking, and it's reflected in the maturation of those activists who've been doing this, and those who have not been doing it. I support protests. I support demonstration. I'm in solidarity with the people who are marching for justice. That's what it's about. We have never had a march where we did not identify who our marshals were. They either have an armband on so that they can be readily identified in case something happens. We have always made it known to the law enforcement community that we're coming. Whether y'all like it or not, we're coming. And these are what we're planning. This is what we're planning to do. This is the lead person, so that they would know in case something went down, they know how to connect with that individual. We have always done that. Everybody doesn't do that. That's a part of organization. That's a part of bringing it together. In a moment like this, people are angry. They're upset. They are sending out on social media, show up in the D, because showing up in the D is sexy. If you say show up in Livonia, that ain't sexy. If you say show up in Troy, show up in Grosse Pointe, that ain't sexy, because the national media would rather come in Detroit because of Detroit rather than to go to Livonia or these other places. But that's where the action needs to be. So we need to make sure that we are well organized. Don't agonize, organize. There's a way to do it. And if you don't know, ask somebody. And they can help you do it. So I think some of it is reflected in the fact that it was not organized or as organized as it could be. That does not mean that it should not occur, but there's a way in which to do it and still make your point and still have your people and still get the job done.
You guys are really hitting Livonia pretty hard.
I just mentioned it could be Troy, Rochester, any of them.
The issue wasn't with
Somebody's hold their tongue pretty well.
Any of them.
the issue wasn't with having organized a protest. The issue was with the behavior they took afterward and those who had other agendas. That was the issue.
So I take a little bit of a different
Yes, sir.
look at this, and part of that is because we are in the middle of a pandemic, and it is highly dangerous for. I am not holding church services. Reverend Anthony is not holding church services not right now. We're not organizing people in mass to do anything around the world. And although there are people who are doing it in Minnesota in different places, I think as an organizational leader who leads people inside of an organization as well as a church and in a city, I believe it was important for us to stand down from holding and organizing protests at this point in mass on the streets. And so I don't support protest public in the streets right now.
Only issue with that is that right now this is a very unique situation. This ain't no normal situation. This is a world. We in a worldwide pandemic, something we never experienced before. We in the middle of that. We in a worldwide issue with an uprising across the nation. So people in Detroit feel some kind of way. They organize to have the right to say their piece. But again, the issue is not with that because they gave them the lane. The issue is with the behavior that's trying to propagate after that. That's what I take issue with.
And the way you curtail and deal with behavior is organization. You have to be organized. That helps to direct the flow and how you want things to go. That's all I'm saying.
And Chief, any indication that some of these people may have been provocateurs from beyond Bay City, that they may have come from another state, that they may be involved with an organization that has no tie-in to the issue at hand yesterday?
We have intelligence that we're working. We're working with our federal partners on some of that. Right now, none of the people that we arrested have come from out of state. They're all local, not local to Detroit, but certainly out of the city. And so many of them we didn't identify, so we don't know. I've heard the stories in other cities where groups have come from out of the state, and so that may have been the case here. I just don't know at this point.
At this point, you're not looking at this as a conspiracy, more so just people losing their minds.
I'm not looking at it as a conspiracy. I believe, based on my professional judgment, that they came here with a very different agenda.
Okay.
MSNBC is indicating about the subject we're talking about, provocateurs. The governor of Minnesota indicated last night that everybody that was arrested and that was picked up in St. Paul was from out of the state of Minnesota.
Right.
Larry Spruill of Local 4. Chief Craig, we've spoken numerous times this week about what's going on in the country, the protests and different things of that nature. As we're all aware, in Atlanta, Minneapolis, they set fire to police cars and buildings.
Yes.
Will there be extra manpower or something done different tonight to keep that from happening here in Detroit?
Well, as I always like to say, we're sufficiently staffed. I'm very confident that our response tonight will be equally as impressive. So I'm not concerned. We pay very close attention to how we responded yesterday. We debriefed on it, had a full debrief. We are making some adjustments, and I certainly won't go into a lot of detail on that, but I feel very good about this evening, and we're going to continue to do the work that we're trying to do.
Two more questions. Reverend Anthony, you briefly touched on people coming from out of the area here for these protests. Is there any type of way to, I know you talked about it as far as the message, is there any type of way to keep them or talk to these people from coming here to Detroit? You mentioned it's sexy, but is there any type of way to keep them from coming?
Well, first of all, I think we want people to come to Detroit. Is how you act when you come here. And I think the way you do that is you organize your people so that the city officials and the law enforcement community know that you come and know who the point people happen to be, so that when stuff go down, you can make that connection. We're not trying to stop anybody. It's the behavior that we want to curtail. I mean, my mom always taught me, boy, when you go to somebody's house, act accordingly. Act like you got some home training. People coming here and they ain't acting like they ain't got no home training. This is our home. We live here. And so while we want people to come, we respect their right to protest. Perhaps there could be some designated areas where protests are welcome to the degree that, okay, well, everybody want to protest. Here's an area. You can go and protest there. But for some, that might not be good enough unless they are protesting in front of a building, or et cetera. But make it accommodate that. But by the same token, there are rules and regulations that have to be observed. And I know America was founded on protests. They threw tea into the river, and America was built upon protest. Folk will tell you that, and sometimes we forget that. But there's a way in which we can do that, and I think that's all we're saying.
Chief Craig, my last question: is there an update on the shooting and the death of the 21-year-old from yesterday?
Yeah, we're still investigating. One question I've gotten, as well as the prosecutor office, is was this directly connected to the protests? We have no indication that it was. We know these young men who were together, it was 3 young men together, residents of East Point, were approached, unknown with the conversation, and there was a shooting. So we don't know the motive yet, but we're still very actively investigating this one and still asking for the public's help.
Thank you.
Hi, Kathy Gray from the New York Times. Is there any movement towards bringing in other departments to help, or any thought of calling for the Michigan National Guard?
No, after the way I watched the Detroit Police Department perform last night, I am enormously proud, and I'm fully confident in the Detroit Police Department. There's no discussion about any other agencies.
Okay.
Hi, Sarah Hewlett from Michigan Radio. You kind of touched on this, but in Minnesota, we are hearing from officials there that they believe that some of the folks that have been arrested have ties to white supremacist groups. Specifically related to that, do you have concerns on that front?
I don't have that information. I have a planned call with my counterpart with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who does have intel. They were actively working with us. I have not received that type of intelligence.
Thank you.
Okay.
I believe they're white supremacists.
All right? Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Moore.